I heard a knock. It was a hungry alien girl begging for help. The wind howled like a hungry animal. Across the empty land, the sky above was dark, painted with ash and storm clouds. Earth was no longer the home it once was. Cities had fallen. Trees had died. Roads had vanished beneath dust and silence. In the middle of this dead world, hidden under the ground, a man named Ethan lived alone. His bunker was strong, cold walls, steel doors, old machines that still worked. He had food, power, and a routine. That was how he had survived the past 3 years, alone. No messages, no visitors, no noise, except for the wind and the quiet hum of the air filters. That night, something changed. Ethan was reading an old digital book, his only light a small lamp on the table. Then it happened. Knocked. A soft, weak knock echoed on the steel door. He froze. It couldn't be. No one knocks anymore. Everyone was either dead or worse. He stood slowly, heart beating louder than the sound. Another knock came. It was softer this time, like a breath. Ethan rushed to the control panel and opened the camera feed. The old screen flickered, showing a blurry image in the darkness outside. And then he saw her. A hand, pale, clawed, shaking, rested against the door. His eyes widened. The hand wasn't human. Too long, too thin, with dark lines running up the arm. He leaned closer. A face appeared in the frame. A girl, but not fully human. Her ears were pointed, furred like a wolf's. Her eyes glowed, faintly, like dying stars. Blood stained her cheek, her shoulder, her clothes. She looked straight into the camera and mouthed something he couldn't hear. Then she collapsed. Ethan stared at the screen, frozen. Should he open the door? His mind raced. What if it was a trap? What if someone was watching him? What if she was infected? But he saw something in her eyes. Not danger, not madness, just fear and pain. He grabbed his coat, walked to the door, and unlocked the outer seal. The heavy metal groaned as it opened. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of dust and blood. She was lying there, still breathing, barely. He bent down and picked her up. She was light to light for someone her size. Her body was cold, her hands like ice. Her clothes were torn. Her skin had strange markings, glowing softly like fading ink. As he stepped back inside with her in his arms, she opened her mouth slightly. Safer, she whispered. Then her eyes closed. Inside the bunker, Ethan laid her gently on the old couch. He quickly checked her wounds. No deep cuts, but bruises and burn marks covered her arms. Her breathing was shallow, and her body trembled like she hadn't eaten in days. He wrapped her in a blanket and gave her water, but she didn't wake. Ethan sat across from her, watching. She wasn't human, that was clear, but she wasn't a beast either. He had seen strange creatures in the last year's mutated animals, wild machines, and once a drone that hunted anything with a heartbeat, but never someone like her. Where had she come from? Who was she running from? And why did she look at him like he was her last hope? Time passed. The wind outside grew louder, hitting the bunker walls like waves crashing on rocks. Ethan walked to the door again and checked the cameras. Nothing, no movement, but something felt wrong. He zoomed out the camera's view. Footprints. Not just hers, 3, maybe from more sets, circling the bunker, then stopping. But no one was there now. Ethan returned inside. He picked up his old rifle and placed it beside the couch. He sat down again, eyes on the girl. She looked peaceful now, but her hands were clenched. Her fingers twitched in her sleep. Her ears moved slightly, like she was still listening, even in her dreams. Ethan sighed. He had a rule: don't let anyone in. But tonight, he broke it, because she knocked, because she said safe, because deep down, even if he didn't want to admit it, he missed someone needing him. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But she was here. And whoever, or whatever, she was running from might not be far behind. The bunker was quiet. Ethan sat on the floor with his back against the wall, eyes half closed, rifle resting beside him. The girl was still asleep, wrapped in a blanket, her breathing soft but steady now. Outside, the desert wind had stopped. Silence filled the space. And then a scream. High, sharp, terrifying. Ethan's eyes flew open. He jumped to his feet. The girl was sitting up on the couch, eyes wide, glowing, mouth open in a soundless scream. Her body trembled. Her claws scratched the blanket. She looked around like a trapped animal. As if she didn't know where she was, Ethan raised his hands. Hey, you're safe. You're inside. No one's going to hurt you. But she didn't hear him. Her ears twitched. Her gaze darted across the room. She saw the rifle. She backed away from him. Hitting the cold wall behind the couch. Ethan quickly pushed the weapon away. I'm not your enemy. The girl's eyes locked onto his. They narrowed, just slightly. Her chest rose and fell with fast, shallow breaths, and then she spoke. Just one word. Trap. Ethan shook his head. No, you came here. You knocked. You collapsed. I helped. You. She stared. The word trap hung heavy in the air. Slowly, her claws loosened. Her breathing slowed. She didn't fully trust him. Not yet. Ethan tried to speak again, softer now. What's your name? The girl blinked, then looked down. She pointed at her chest with one finger. Lyra. Her voice was dry, cracked, but there was a strange beauty in it, like a song that had been broken by war. Okay, Lyra. Ethan said. I'm Ethan. He reached for a water bottle and offered it to her. She hesitated, sniffed it, then drank. Her hands shook, like someone who hadn't felt safe in a long, long time. Over the next hour, they sat without words. Ethan cooked something simple: boiled rice and dried meat. When the smell filled the air, Lyra's ears perked up. Her stomach growled so loud it almost made Ethan laugh. She devoured the food, not like a wild animal, but like someone trying to survive with dignity. When she finished, she looked at him with tired eyes, and then she did something strange. She reached into the pouch tied to her torn belt and pulled out a small piece of metal. It was bent, scratched, but had strange markings on it. She placed it on the table between them. What's this? Ethan asked. Lyra tapped it, then tapped her chest. This me. Ethan leaned closer. It was some kind of tag. Military, alien tech, maybe both. The back was scorched, but one word glowed faintly in a language he didn't understand. He looked up. Were you part of something? Lyra nodded once. Pack. Gone. Her voice trembled. Ethan understood. She had lost everything. Later that night, while Lyra slept again, this time without screaming, Ethan checked the perimeter cameras. Still, no movement. But deep in the corner of one frame, he noticed something. A piece of cloth, caught on a rock, not there before. He zoomed in. It wasn't Lyra's. He stepped back, uneasy. Someone else had been here. Maybe still was. Back inside, he glanced at Lyra again. Her ears twitched in her sleep. Her tail moved slightly under the blanket. She wasn't just some creature hiding in the dark. She was a survivor, and maybe a warning. Whatever hunted her might now be hunting him to. The bunker felt colder that morning. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat by the main console, staring at the security feeds again and again. His fingers hovered over the playback controls. He rewound the footage from the night before. There it was again. A movement, a shadow near the rocks, just after midnight. A figure crouched low, watching the bunker. It never came close. It didn't need to. It was observing, waiting. Ethan whispered to himself. They found her. Lyra was awake now. She stood near the small sink, washing her hands slowly. Her claws had softened. Her breathing was normal. Again, but her eyes, those glowing, pale eyes, were full of worry. He turned to her. Someone was out there. She didn't look surprised. I know, she said. Her voice was steady this time. They come. Always come. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Who? She didn't answer with words. Instead, she walked to the table, picked up the broken tag she had shown him the day before, and traced the glowing mark with her claw. Then, slowly, she began to draw on the table using chalk. 3 symbols. A tower, a cage, and something that looked like a needle. She tapped all 3, then said, labs, humans, aliens. Same hands. Ethan's stomach twisted. You were experimented on. Lyra nodded. My pack. All taken. I ran. Her voice cracked. They want me back. Not alive, just useful. Suddenly, the alarm beeped. Motion detected. Ethan rushed to the console. The outer perimeter sensors were lighting up. Multiple signals, approaching fast. 5, 6, maybe. More. He turned to Lyra. She was already backing away, claws extended. No time. They come now. Ethan grabbed his rifle and the side pistol he kept hidden under the cabinet. How do they track you? She pointed to her skin, marked inside. Under flesh. A tracker. He moved to the storage closet, threw it open, and pulled out a small field surgical kit. We remove it. Lyra's eyes widened. Now, no choice. She bit her lip, nodded once, and laid on the metal table. Ethan worked fast. Sterilizer. Blade. Scanner. The device was buried in her left shoulder deep, near the bone. With every cut, Lyra hissed and gripped the table harder. I'm sorry, Ethan muttered. Almost there. Finally, the scanner beeped. He pulled out a thin, black chip. It blinked once, still active. He dropped it into a small lead box and slammed it shut. The signal stopped. Outside, the sensors went quiet. Ethan checked the cameras. The figures were no longer moving toward the bunker. They lost the signal, he whispered. But Lyra didn't smile. They still look, she said. They always look. She sat up, pale, bleeding, but fierce. They won't stop. Ethan nodded slowly. Then he walked to the far side of the bunker and pulled a cover from the floor. Under it was a tunnel. Then we run first. Lyra stared at the tunnel entrance. And for the first time, she smiled just a little. You are not like them. Ethan gave a half smile back. I'm not sure what I am anymore. They packed quickly. Water, supplies, weapons. No time for goodbyes. As they disappeared into the underground tunnel, the last camera outside picked up movement again. The figures returned strange armor, red lenses glowing in the dark. One of them knelt at the door, pressed a device to the wall, and whispered into a comms unit. She was here. She had help, a distorted voice replied. Then burn it all. Back in the tunnel, Lyra paused. Her ears twitched. She turned. Ethan asked, What is it? She replied softly, The hunt begins again. The tunnel felt endless. Their footsteps echoed in the silence as dust floated in beams of weak light filtering from above. The old service passage hadn't been used in decades, built for a war no one even remembered. Now, it was just a forgotten scar under the earth. Ethan walked in front, flashlight in hand, weapons slung across his back. Lyra followed close, limping slightly, her shoulders still raw from the implant surgery. He noticed she was breathing heavier. Now, you okay? He asked without turning. No answer. He stopped. Lyra was standing still, both hands on her knees, eyes shut tight. Ethan stepped closer. Lyra, she growled, not at him, at something inside her. Her hands trembled. Her ears twitched rapidly. Her claws began to extend slowly, involuntarily. Her breathing turned into panting. Not now, not here, she whispered, voice shaking. Ethan stepped back, unsure. What's happening to you? She looked up at him, and in that moment, he saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of him, fear of herself. Dusk, she muttered. It's dusk. Then she collapsed on all fours. The light at the end of the tunnel turned golden orange. The sun was going down. Lyra's skin began to ripple. Her bones cracked, not loudly, but enough for Ethan to flinch. Her spine arched, shoulders stretched, her form shifting like water fighting to keep its shape. But this wasn't a violent transformation. It was painful but graceful, like a wild creature breaking free from tight chains. Fur pushed through her skin. Her fingers lengthened. Her back grew broader. Her eyes opened, now bright gold, glowing like twin moons. She looked at Ethan. And for one awful moment he thought she didn't recognize him. He raised his rifle, not to shoot, but to prepare, just in case. Lyra stepped forward. Her shape was fully changed, now half wolf, half girl. Her voice was gone, replaced by low breaths and a low hum in her chest. She crouched, sniffed the air, and turned away. She didn't attack. She walked to the edge of the tunnel, sat down, and looked up at the sky through a crack in the ceiling. The setting sun touched her fur with soft light. She howled, not like a beast, like someone mourning. The sound was deep, long, lonely. It echoed through the tunnel like a forgotten lullaby. Ethan slowly lowered his rifle. Minutes passed. Lyra didn't move. Then, quietly, her body began to shift back. The fur shrank. The claws retracted. The glow in her eyes dimmed. She collapsed to her knees, sweating, shivering, barely holding herself up. Ethan rushed forward and caught her before she hit the ground. Her voice was barely a whisper. I tried to hold it back. He nodded. You did. I didn't want you to see that part of me. Ethan looked down at her, holding her steady. Why? She hesitated. Because that's the part they wanted to control. Later that night, they camped in a narrow, safe pocket between broken pipes. Ethan lit a small fire. Lyra rested beside it, wrapped in a thermal blanket. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Before the labs, we transformed under moonlight. We were free. We ran together. We laughed." He looked at her, letting her speak. "They used drugs, pain, machines, forced us to change early, to fight each other, to become weapons." She glanced at him. "But I still remember what the old change felt like. It wasn't pain. It was home." Ethan didn't say anything. He just tossed more wood on the fire and handed her some dried fruit. And in that small act of silence, Lyra smiled, a tired smile, but real, outside. In the wastelands above, something else stirred. The hunters had reached the bunker. They didn't speak. They burned it. But they didn't leave. They were scanning, tracking. They knew Lyra had changed form recently, and the scent of her transformation was still fresh in the air. They followed it like wolves made of steel. They had reached the ruins of an old train yard. Steel bones of forgotten engines lay broken across the cracked ground. Rusted cargo boxes were scattered like ancient tombs. The scent of oil and burnt plastic filled the air. Ethan and Lyra took shelter inside one of the boxcars, its walls thick enough to block scanners at least for a while. Lyra sat near the back, sharpening her claws on a metal rod. Her face was calm. Ethan checked the entrance again, then turned to her. "How far behind do you think they are?" Lyra didn't look up. "They are not far. They never are." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "We need a plan. We need to leave," she replied. "No." He shook his head. "They'll follow. Doesn't matter where. Doesn't matter how far." He walked over to an old crate, kicked it open, and pulled something from beneath a dusty tarp. A heavy device, military grade. Power cell still blinking. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "Something I hoped I'd never need again." He placed the device on the floor, pressed a switch. A deep hum filled the boxcar. Blue lights pulsed along the edges. "It's a pulse trap," he said. "Used for disabling drones and vehicles." Lyra tilted her head. "It won't stop them." "No." Ethan agreed. "But it'll slow them down. And if they're coming for you, they'll find me standing in the way." That night, the wind returned slow, eerie. Then came the silence. No birds, no night creatures. Nothing. Lyra's ears perked up. She stood suddenly. "They're here." Ethan didn't ask how she knew. He already believed her. He picked up his rifle and walked to the door. Outside, shapes moved between the shadows. 6 figures, tall, armored, faces covered, guns glowing. They were not human. At least, not anymore. Synthetic muscle, wired nerves, red sensors scanning everything. They stopped a few feet from the boxcar. One stepped forward. Its voice came through a built-in speaker. "Cold, metallic. Return the specimen. No damage needed." Yet Ethan shouted back, "She's not yours. She never was." A pause. Then, "You've chosen death." The first shot hit the side of the boxcar like thunder. Sparks flew. Metal bent inward. Lyra growled low, stepping beside Ethan. Her claws were out, her stance ready. Ethan whispered, "They'll breach in 30 seconds." Lyra looked at him. "I go out first." "No." Ethan said, "You're still recovering." She smiled faintly. "I'm not hiding again." Then she kicked the back wall of the car. It gave way. She leapt through the opening like a shadow into the wind. Ethan turned on the pulse trap. The device screamed. A blast of blue light exploded from the car, knocking 2 of the enemy soldiers off their feet. Their weapons fizzled, but the others moved forward. Relentless. Ethan took aim. He fired. Outside, Lyra was a blur of motion. She wasn't fully transformed, but enough. Her claws ripped through armor. Her howl echoed across the yard. One enemy raised its weapon to slow. She lunged and took it down, but there were too many. Back inside, Ethan was forced to retreat. He opened his old war bag one last trick. An EMP grenade. He kissed the fuse like a prayer and rolled it under the train. Boom. The blast knocked out everything: sensors, weapons, and for a moment, silence. When the dust settled, Lyra crawled back into the boxcar. Blood on her arms, cuts across her chest. Ethan pulled her in and shut the hatch. She collapsed beside him, breathing hard. "They'll send more." He nodded. "Let them." She looked at him. "Why are you doing this?" He leaned back, eyes tired but sharp. "Because they don't get to decide who's a person and who's property." Lyra looked down and whispered, "You remind me of my brother." Ethan said nothing, because sometimes silence is louder than comfort. Morning never came. Smoke still lingered in the air as the old train yard turned silent once again. Nothing moved, no birds, no wind, only the soft hum of dying machines. But deep inside the boxcar, two fighters breathed heavily. One human, one alien, both wounded, both unwilling to give up. Ethan wrapped Lyra's arm in clean cloth. The gash was deep, but not fatal. She barely winced. "You should rest," he said. She shook her head. No time. They both knew it. The first wave was only a scout team. The real hunters were still coming. Ethan opened a locked crate in the far corner of the car. Inside lay an old armor vest, faded green, with burn marks across its surface. He hadn't worn it in years. Lyra watched him gear up. "You were a soldier?" He nodded. "Long time ago. I fought for a flag, then watched it burn." "Why did you stop?" "I didn't believe in the war anymore." She looked away. "I never had a choice." He turned to her. "You do now." They moved fast, setting up traps across the yard, hidden spikes under gravel, flash bombs inside crates. Wires stretched tight between the rails. As the sun disappeared behind the clouds, shadows crept across the ruins. Then a deep sound filled the air. Engines. Heavy footsteps. Drones in the sky. The hunters had returned with full force. 10 armored figures. To flying drones. A crawler tank rumbling behind them like a beast made of fire and steel. From the boxcar roof, Ethan whispered, "Showtime." The battle began without warning. One drone flew to low, snared in a wire trap. It exploded mid-air. Lighting up the sky, Ethan fired his rifle, striking the lead soldier in the neck. The enemy stumbled but didn't fall. Lyra leapt from a pile of crates, claws out, eyes glowing bright. She struck fast, weaving through fire like a shadow, cutting through steel with the grace of a dancer and the fury of a storm. But the enemy adapted. Their leader, larger than the rest, raised his arm. Man from it, a net of energy launched out. It caught Lyra mid-air, slamming her into a wall. She screamed. The net crackled against her skin. Ethan shouted, jumping down with a grenade in hand. He tossed it under the enemy's feet and dragged Lyra away just in time. Boom. Dust, fire, smoke. They rolled behind cover, gasping. Lyra's voice cracked. "I can't change again. Too weak." Ethan touched her face. "Then fight as you are." And she did. Together, they moved through the yard like ghosts with teeth. Ethan's shots were clean, controlled. He knew where to aim weak joints. Neck plates, sensor visors. Lyra struck where he couldn't, leaping, slashing, kicking through metal. At one point, Ethan was cornered. A hunter raised his blade, but before it could strike, Lyra flew in from the side, taking the hit herself. She landed hard, bleeding. Ethan dragged her behind a crate and pulled her close. "You saved me." Her breath was weak. "Because you saved me first." With one last burst of strength, Ethan activated his emergency beacon. It sent out a single command, his old military code. EMP detonate. Area sweep to 5 seconds. He threw Lyra to the ground, covered her with his body. The world went white. Flash. All systems down. The hunters fell, their suits twitching, their weapons silent. Only silence remained. When Ethan opened his eyes, everything was still. Lyra was beneath him, eyes open. Breathing. Alive. She smiled weakly. "You fight well, human." He smiled back, battered and bruised. "So do you, partner." The battle was over. Smoke drifted across the yard, curling around broken armor and shattered machines. The bodies of the hunters lay still, sparks flickering in the ruins like dying fireflies. Ethan stood quietly, rifle in one hand, his other arm wrapped around Lyra as they walked away from the last wreckage. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Their silence said everything. We survived. They found shelter in a collapsed radio tower at the edge of the canyon. Its roof was broken, but it had walls, warmth, and most importantly, peace. Ethan lit a fire. Lyra sat across from him, eyes dim but calm. Her wounds were healing slower now, but the tension in her body was gone. He handed her a metal cup of hot broth. She took it with both hands, warm, she whispered. He smiled. You earned it. She tilted her head. So did you. That night, as the stars appeared one by one in the sky above, Lyra stood outside and looked up. The moon was full, but this time, she didn't change. Ethan stepped beside her, watching her face. You're not shifting. She shook her head slowly. I'm choosing not to. He didn't ask why, but she answered anyway. For once, I don't feel hunted. For once, I feel free. Days passed. They built a camp near the canyon cliff, planted seeds, repaired an old antenna, shared stories in fragments, hers of stars and packmates long lost, his of wars that never ended. One morning, Ethan woke to find Lyra gone. He ran out, heart pounding, only to see her at the edge of the cliff, watching the sun rise. Beside her was a pile of small stones, each one marked with a symbol. He approached quietly. For your family? He asked. She nodded. My pack. She placed the final stone and said softly, they are free now. As the sun painted the sky gold, Lyra turned to Ethan. Will they come again? She asked. Ethan thought for a long moment, then said, probably. There's always someone who wants to control what they fear. She nodded. Then we stay ready. He chuckled. Always. She smiled. But we also live. He raised a brow. Live, yes, she said. Laugh, plant, sleep under the stars, run without fear. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. And he realized something. She wasn't a weapon. She wasn't a threat. She was a beginning. The final scene fades as the two of them sit by the fire again. Lyra hums an old melody, maybe a lullaby, maybe a goodbye. Ethan closes his eyes, the war behind them, the unknown ahead. But together, they were not afraid, not anymore.